Greetings and welcome, everybody, and happy holidays. This is UC Weekly News for this week, and we're going to have a nice chat that sort of winds up the year. What were the bigger stories this year? What's going on? I have a lot of my friends on the call. Everyone was invited. These are the only five people that were actually interested in joining us. So I got to get more friends next year. I guess that's going to be a resolution. But I would like them all to introduce themselves. And this is the one time that we're going to go through, and I'm going to call on everybody one at a time. Tim Banting, since you're the first one on my image, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Hi, David. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Tim Banting. I'm Head of Research and Business Intelligence at Techtelligence.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Michels, three Daves on the call. Really cool.
Too many Daves. Davids, too many Davids. I got to ask you, David, you got that on-air sign up behind you, and I've always wondered if that goes off when you're not on the air. I've never known because you've always been on when we're talking. But David Michels from Talking Points, and can't wait to correct all of you.
I appreciate that, Dave. And I guess I'll have to sit in the refrigerator and close the door to see if the light stays on. That's a good thing to try. Mr. Kieller, your turn.
Yeah, so first, I do agree there's too many Davids on this episode, but what can you do? So I'm Kevin
Kevins
Keeler.
too.
Yes, there you go. I'm Kevin Keeler. I am the co-founder of Enable UC. I am part analyst and part consultant, and that parts together, I think, provides good value.
Mr. Maldow.
Hi, I'm David Maldow. I'm the industry curmudgeon and contrarian, and I'm disagreeing with everyone. I'm saying there's not enough Davids here. So that's my role here.
Dave, I don't think you can get away with the people that are on this call calling yourself the industry curmudgeon. I think that's a title that's up for grabs. And
I disagree.
Last but not least, Irwin, your shot.
I'm David Irwin Lazar, President Principal Analyst at Metrigy Research. I lead our research around communications, collaboration, and focusing mostly these days on compliance and security.
Just looking at your background there, Irwin, looks like Metrigy had pretty big layoffs.
Yeah, it's my at least 7-year-old now Zoom background that I found somewhere and have never moved away from.
All right, so let's talk about imaging just for a second before we get into the conversation. First of all, I bought these a year ago on clearance. I always like to wear something cool during the holiday shows, so there's I'm celebrating the holiday. The on-air light is actually pretty new. I used to have the Atari light, which is still back there, but I'm working on. I keep the background updated all the time. The latest one is there it is, the fireplace. Anybody notices that one?
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. I have a lot of stuff on order. I'm also wearing shameless plug. I'm also wearing one of my shirts that are for sale, the Zero BS Accepted, and I'd have to turn around. You can't see it. It says UC Weekly News on the back of it. I've also got one back there that the brutal honesty inside. And if you haven't seen those, here's the link for those. You can go and buy those. It's from a reputable third company, and it's all the things that we like to say about travel and technology. And No BS Accepted is the shirt I'm going to be wearing when I walk up to the vendors at the next trade show and say, "What have you got to tell me?" So it's all the session. So
I'm glad you told us it's a fireplace because I was getting ready to dial 011899.
no, it's showing how
Audience gets that reference.
It's showing how hot the pick hits thing is. That's right next to it. If you can, I still have to work on the sizing and everything else. But anyway, all right. So this was a really wacky year, 2025. It was marked by a lot of things that we expected and a lot of things that we didn't expect, certainly a big hype bubble. People that have joined this call that are going to be speaking probably have a lot of overlapping ideas, but I'd like to kind of get into them. So why don't we go in the opposite order that we just went in? Mr. Lazar, what would be your top story in our space for this past year?
That's a good one. I would say there were a lot, but the one that jumped out at me was that there's a market out there beyond Microsoft. We've, as analysts covering the UCAS space and UC space, I think we've sort of had this maybe almost assumption over the last few years that Microsoft was going to quickly consolidate, continue to grow. But I think if you look in the last years, most recently, Zoom's earnings this week, RingCentral's earnings, 8x8 now is showing a positive trend, that there continues to be a market out there, whether it's through companies that are offering arguably superior services or more focused on the UC space, as Microsoft has moved maybe a little bit more around AI and Copilot, and around issues related to Microsoft unbundling being forced by the EU, price increases for Microsoft PSTN add-on licenses. I think it's opened the door to say, you know what, yeah, maybe the UCAS competitors aren't all growing at double-digit rates, but they're thriving. And I think from an enterprise perspective, there continues to be choice. I mean, Cisco as well has reported growth in their subscription business.
Erwin, what was the headline of your point there? What was the
There are chinks in the Microsoft armor that there's opportunities for companies to continue to grow and thrive in an environment where, again, I think we thought a couple of years ago that Microsoft would just own this space.
I would probably, while I agree with you, I'd probably open that up in that, as you pointed out, Zoom's earnings that we just recently heard were off the charts, but their market share in collaboration is dropping. And believe it or not, they're losing market share to Microsoft and to Google and a few others. And I think there's an opportunity if someone were to come into the marketplace or reemerge in the marketplace saying, "Hey, we heard what everybody wants around collab, and look at what we've got, or look at what we've got now." I think that's a tremendous opportunity, and there might be some inclinations of that happening. So
I
we'll
think,
have to keep an eye on it. But it's a good point.
yeah, building on that part, David, I think what's happening now at the moment is that UC as a term, what does it mean? I mean, it's, yeah, unified communications, but we've heard about multicast, we've heard about unified communications and collaboration. I think what we're seeing here is this power structure is hardening around those people that offer a combined and extensive portfolio. So I think what we're seeing here is there's a bigger trend, and I think this is the one that's important for me, is we're seeing these different strategic clusters based on what you want. If you want to have AI at no additional cost, including your CX and UC platform, maybe Zoom's a choice for you. If you want to have a platform that includes all of your Microsoft Office suite, integrates well across the whole suite, but AI comes at a cost and data compliance comes at a cost, maybe you go for Microsoft. But I think what we're seeing is these different strategic clusters and platforms appealing to different sorts of buying centers. So for me, what's interesting in the year ahead will be, those centers of gravity, what sort of businesses and what sort of buying centers gravitate to each one of those different clusters.
Good question. I mean, you wouldn't believe it from me, and we were talking contrarian before, David. I will not spend money on Microsoft 365 or Office 365. I'm still using, I think, Word 2016 or 2020 or whatever. I'm not going to rent software for my computer. I'm only going to buy it and install it. So it's interesting. Everybody's got their own perspective on that. But Irwin, I think you're making some really good points, and that was kind of a change and a twist this year. So well done. Let's do video, Mr. Maldow. Well, what do you have on your list so far?
Oh, so it was really tricky. I had so many things to pick from, and I'm still like, and right now I'm like, which one should I do? But I'll pick one because it's a fun one and it's a positive one, and it's all the note takers in all of our UC meetings. Every time you join a meeting, there's David's note taker and Kevin's note taker, and at first I saw people complaining, "Oh, I have to let all these notes." You're complaining about nothing. Letting in a note taker is come on, it's like letting in a person. They don't bother you. They sit there, and they're actually a good thing. What I find is, of course they do what you expect them to do. If we're sitting there, we're saying, oh, we're going to have to meet next Friday. At the end, you're going to get a task in your AI task thing, whichever one you're using, that says, call David for next Friday. But I like the fact that it makes tasks that we wouldn't think would be tasks. Like we'll be chatting about something, and Irwin and I will be talking about some trend that we're aligned on, and we'll say, oh yeah, we should do something about that. And Irwin will get it. The note taker, Irwin's note taker, will put a task saying, call David and follow up on that project you two want to do together. That's not like it. It doesn't just give you the obvious test that are tasks. It comes up with stuff. I don't know if I explained that well, but I think you guys, by the nods, I think you guys know what I'm saying. I think it's with all the AI stuff being thrown at us, right? Like Zoom had 4,000 new features this year or something like that. And there's AI here, and we're all complaining about how a lot of it is AI slop and AI garbage and just marketing. This is the one use of AI that it actually does right what it says, it's going to do, what it says on, what's it? That's a British expression, what it says on the tin.
it does what it says on the tin.
It does what it says on the tin. It does it better than I expected. It's no problem. It doesn't bother anybody, and it's just become an accepted thing. It's almost a non-story. I love when something's a non-story. It reminds me, when I came into the industry, we all wore ties to every convention, and then one year we didn't wear ties, and I didn't get a memo. No one said anything. It wasn't a story. No one talked about it, but it just happened. And I feel like that's what's going on with these note taker AI agents in all of our meetings. It's yes, there could be something good out of AI.
You make an interesting point, and if we attend a meeting that has 10 people involved, online meeting, video meeting, and there are 10 note takers, at some point is somebody going to say, do we really need this? Do we really need all 10? Does everybody need to have their own? And I guess the reason that that's happening is because A, people want to control the content, or they want to own the content, or they want to access the content. We all attend briefings that are done by certain platforms, and then we have to beg them to get the transcript or the replay because we don't have it. Are we going to be in a situation where everybody's going to have their own note taker, and there'll be like 9 things taking notes on one call?
I think there will be. And then the other thing you'll see is that if you decide, you know what, I don't want this meeting recorded, transcribed, so I'm going to block any note takers from coming in, people will hold their phone up to their speakers if they're not wearing a headset and, use whatever tool they have on their mobile phone to capture meeting info.
Oh, exactly. And, again, when we talk about analyst briefings, sometimes I really want to get the transcript earlier than it's provided. I do have an air gap phone next to my video device here so that if I'm on one platform and I don't want to have to wait for the transcript from them, I'm going to record it on another platform using the phone and,
Yeah.
and get the transcript immediately. I mean, absolutely. But, we're not the typical user. I'm trying to think of the typical experiences. Like I think I was on a call yesterday from an interesting client that I'm going to start covering. Not client, we don't have a financial relationship, but new product in the space. And I wanted to record it to get the transcript, and they had their note taker on there, and their note taker sent me the notes afterwards. I don't know if that was automatic or because I was on the call, but it's definitely an interesting space.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a movement towards what some of the vendors are doing, where the notes are shared during the meeting, so you see what's being recorded, so it's not a surprise afterwards. And a lot of the vendors are saying, well, we'll have the AI note taker show what's being recorded, so you can see if it missed something, and then any of the participants on the call can add additional bullet points if you think that the AI missed stuff. I think that that's way more transparent than waiting till the end of the meeting and saying, what the heck, this totally got this wrong or assigned it to the wrong person. So I think we're going to move to that humans and AI working simultaneously during our meetings.
I don't think that's going to happen at all, Kevin. I think you're way too optimistic there. I do a lot of time shifted work, and I regularly will miss a meeting that I should be at, but I'll try to attend it, a half hour after the meeting. I want to stay current. I just couldn't make that particular time slot, but you can't get people to send out the links, the recorded links. It takes days sometimes. It takes days to get the slides of a meeting. The problem with real-time note-taking is that it's more of a transcript and it's not that smart. The better note-taking is after the fact, where it kind of looks at the whole call and figures out how much time was presented, where emotions got hotter and colder. And so those things it's not real time. And then for someone to send that out, and it's such a contradiction right now because our bosses or most employees are feeling pressure from their companies to learn AI, change your practices, embrace it, etc. But then we still have all these corporate rules, and it's like, well, we don't allow this recording, or you have to use our AI. You can't use it. This is going to take a while for it to play out. So I think David's point earlier, are we going to have 10 AIs in the meeting taking notes? No, there's no cost. It doesn't really get in the way. So the answer is probably yes. That's the path of least resistance for a while. But it is weird.
Yeah.
It is really weird.
So there's
Yeah, I
a
think
major leakage or something like that where somebody's meeting transcripts got shared where they shouldn't be shared, and there's a $200 million fine from the SEC or something like that. You're right.
Yeah.
It'll still be the wild, wild west.
And Irwin, on some of the panels that you've done where you've happened to have had a guest speaker talk about AI and recordings, I've made the point that we are still assuming they're right when they're probably not. And I had an interesting call, again, an industry call between one other analyst and a manufacturer. And it was a call where the first thing I did when I joined was I clicked the record button because I wanted a transcript. And the other people on the call said, you know what, don't record this one. We'd rather not. Okay, I stopped recording. The AI, assistant, companion, whatever you want to call it, was on. So about every 10 minutes or so on the call, I hit whatever the catch me up, what have we talked about so far, and I just copied and pasted the notes into a document up to the end of it. And at the end of that call, the call ended, and I immediately got the call summary from that AI companion, which didn't match the notes at all.
Right.
It's highlighting certain things that it thinks is important, but we don't know what that algorithm is. How is it determining what's important? It's not what I would consider important from the actual ongoing notes that it took. So I think we're trusting this stuff without really examining it, and that I think is a big deal.
Well, but I think that this is where Dave Michels got it totally wrong. It's like, for example, like Microsoft Facilitator, if you turn that on, and it's easy to turn it on, it's not hard. Like AI Companion, with Zoom's AI Companion, you can just say, turn it on all the time. But Facilitator, to your point, David Danto, it shows you during this discussion the things that it is capturing. And so if you disagree with it, you don't have to wait to the end of the meeting. We all collectively see it. I can't think why that would be a bad idea. And Zoom has an interesting thing where you can do just jot notes, and then it'll use, so you determine what's important to you, because maybe not the whole discussion is, and then it uses AI just to flesh out the jot notes and add more detail from the transcript, right? So
Okay, I don't want to.
But the problem that you're not touching on it, everybody has their preferred tools. So your tool is the team's tool, and it works great for you with Facilitator. But for us to do our workflow, we need to be able to use our tools, whatever. And the meeting that I was just missed a few days ago, they sent me on a Google Drive a link to the MP4 file, and I said, great. And I started using my AI tools as I have access to the file. But it's like, oh no, Google restricts access to AI unless you have download rights. So the guy shared it to me, but he didn't give me download rights. So I couldn't use any of my tools. And so I had to go back and ask for permissions. So the problem is the workflow. It's not the technology, it's the workflow. And so if everybody, and then if you have a meeting that's in person, then are you going to use a different tool? If you have a meeting at a Starbucks, are you going to use a different tool? If I get invited to a Teams call, what am I going to use? And that's the mess we're in.
And it'll only get more interesting as people start sending their agents to meetings, and the agent handles everything for them, where they're not even attending the meeting.
Yeah. So Kevin, I'll make one comment on what you said that I think is actually kind of important, in that. And I don't particularly agree with the idea, but there are a lot of people that do the old school rules around meetings, so that when you got 16, 17, 20 people in a room, they want you to put your phone down and focus on the conversation. I'm a multitasker. I think that's stupid, but there are a lot of people who believe that. I'm afraid in this particular example, if I'm watching the notes and the AI, I'm not paying attention to what people are really saying. I'm now involved in adjusting the record instead of participating in the conversation. And it's good if that's good for somebody, but is that better than what we had before? I don't really know.
I really quick. We want to replicate the real meeting. And when I'm in a meeting when I was an attorney and I'd have 10 attorneys and a paralegal, we talk and have our meeting. We weren't looking over the paralegal's shoulder saying, let's correct his or her notes as the meeting's going so we have a good record. You trust the paralegal to take the notes, and afterwards you look at it and you say, hey, they got this wrong. They always got it wrong. Just like the AI doesn't mean we didn't use the paralegal, we shouldn't use the AI. You were in the meeting, or someone was in the meeting, they look at the notes, they fix it, but you don't say, hey, paralegal, put your notes on the screen, and as the chief attorney's talking, I'm going to look at your notes. And no, you got to just have your meeting and trust your note taker and look at it afterwards. It's a weird workflow. It might be technologically possible. The AI can do that. They can put it up there and we can comment it and adjust it, but I don't think we want to. Sorry, Kevin, I love you, but.
Yeah, what I find really weird about this, though, is we're talking about meetings, for goodness sake. With AI and agentic and workflow, I would have hoped that, we would have had an alternative to meetings, or AI would be smart enough to say, you've got 53 people on this call. this shouldn't be a meeting. This should be an event. This should be a one-way, you know, imparting of information. Or AI should be clever enough to realize we don't need a meeting for this. This is a project update. Just send me out the notes of where you are in the cycle. Have you completed the tasks on time? That's what I want AI to do, is less meetings rather than note taking for all of them, me going away and trying to read through those notes, seeing if there's any, you know, action points from it, if it's not taken down in the right way. I don't want any more meetings. I want to be able to do away with those.
Mm.
But a lot of that is down to corporate culture.
Yeah.
And I don't think AI will fix corporate culture.
Yeah, I
AI
think
is
so.
corporate
So,
culture.
so
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to say I think you guys have created a whole bunch of use cases which have already been solved. So, for example, if it's important, you're in a court of law, you ask the person to read back the transcript. If you're in an important board meeting, you might ask the note taker, did you capture this? If you're in a facilitated session on a whiteboard, we all sit down and when somebody facilitates and writes it. There's different meeting types. And so I think to pick one AI and say, oh, this doesn't work, Dave Michels, because you don't want to attend the meeting. Well, yes, a real-time note taker, if you're not in the meeting, that doesn't help you, but that's a different use case, right? So I think that when new technology comes out, we're smart enough, or at least some of us are, to figure out how to use the technology in a particular way to make things better. And I think these tools do help, back to your point, I think, David Maldow, who started this great discussion.
Okay, so I'm gonna interrupt here and just point out that Mr. Michels was actually right when we started. We're 20 minutes in and we've covered two topics, so we're definitely going to take the full hour. Kevin Keeler, you were up next. What was your big story from 2025, and how will we spend the next 10 minutes talking about that?
Yeah, so I wanted to try to figure out something a little bit different, and I'm going to say that 2025 was the year where there was starting to be a focus on what I'm going to call agentic agent infrastructure, and so for example, like Cisco's had some really good success with people looking to upgrade their network equipment, thinking about for the future agent to agent communication. And they've got one slide that they don't show enough, in my opinion. Well, we're using chatbots, like I put a prompt, the chatbot takes a few seconds, comes back. I, as a human, take longer to read the answer, maybe follow up with the prompt. So it's very spiky use. But as we have agent to agent communication at the speed of, computers, that puts a very different demand on your network. And I think, Cisco did talk about that at WebEx1. I think that their forward-looking people are saying, yes, we better build this infrastructure to support all this agent-to-agent communication. And just a couple of weeks ago at Microsoft Ignite, and there was big pushback on this, but really all about Ignite, the whole focus was on helping us all become agent bosses and control our agent workforce. And Microsoft says there's going to be 1.3 billion agents that are going to be in use by 2028. Don't know if that's going to happen. They're making Windows, be an agentic OS, and everybody hates that idea because they're like, hey, I'm not ready for this. But I think we're starting to see 2025 that agentic infrastructure, and maybe companies that jump on it 2 years from now, when you're trying to control a workforce of 1.3 billion agents, maybe you'll say, thank goodness, they had that foresight. But that, I think, was what we saw starting and was kind of an under the covers story for 2025.
Yeah, agentic was definitely the word of the year, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to, move to the infrastructure piece of it as opposed to, I still like I'm not managing 20 agents and, 20 employees yet. I don't know about you, Irwin, but I think there are some early use cases and early adopters of this, but I think it's interesting if we're moving to 1.3 billion agents in a couple of years.
Sounds like we're reinventing ourselves. I'm sort of thinking like, do you remember the days of Avid, the architecture for video, voice, and integrated data that Cisco came out with when they led the transition to IP telephony? It now seems like we're going to add another quad layer of AI in there so that I wonder if human interaction and voice will take precedence over AI. agents speaking to each other, or how they prioritize that, I'm not too sure. But interesting thought. A new sort of option for QoS, quality of service.
Hmm.
I mean, I think there are two issues that we're seeing. One is, how do you deploy all these agents and manage them and deal with security and the interactions that they have to have through different applications. You saw Oracle launch an orchestration platform that's designed for that. I just talked to another company that's getting into that same space. There's an infrastructure opportunity to put a layer in that interconnects AI with other applications that it needs, and then again, to manage it from a performance and security. And I guess the other big issue I think is really going to be a big one in 26 is the physical compute infrastructure. I live in an area in Northern Virginia where they've been building data center after data center after data center, and the backlash that has happened in the last year or 2 years now has completely reshaped the politics of data centers. People don't want them anymore. And yet at the same time, you're seeing, Google say, well, we have to double compute power every 6 months in order to keep up with advances. Where are they going to get the power? Where are they going to get the water? And where are they going to get the land to build these data centers where the communities will welcome them? I think could end up being a massive constraint on the growth of AI over the next year. And, the amount of compute resources that are required to do 1.2 billion agents, I can't even imagine what it would take.
Underwater nuclear power.
Yeah.
It won't be underwater, it'll be in space, and that's coming. But
Yep.
But it is interesting.
As long as not Starship launching it. Yeah.
Data centers were ideal neighbors for a long time. They don't have any traffic. They don't pollute. They're just great little neighbors. And what he's talking about is a very important shift that's happening. Not on my view.
No, David, as long as we're on you, what is your view? What's your top?
So David Danto and myself have an advantage that we put out a monthly report. So I was able to go through the monthly report of the year and kind of pick up headlines. And it's extraordinary to me how many significant stories there are this year and how small they are at the same time, because we're at the beginning of so many things. There's so many transitions going on. And I just the list of really important stories from I know David's probably going to want to talk about MDEP, but just the Starlink and T-Mobile making cell phones to space, just all these little things that just they're a headline for a month or so, and then they kind of just disappear into the noise. But there's so many pieces like this that are just fundamentally changing the way we communicate, how we communicate, where we communicate. I want to actually go back to the beginning. Irwin talked about teams, and then Tim kind of amplified that he felt that UC was changing. These things are very related. Microsoft's had the ability to pivot to something that it sees as more lucrative with all of the AI story and how it's repositioning. A lot of the other companies have not been able to make that kind of same pivot, but they've all kind of pivoted away from the core plumbing of unified communications. No one's really talking about unified communications. No one's really talking about meetings. The AI story is really taken over. And I think it's important to note how much the AI story is evolving. And so I'm going to say that this is the year. This is the year. I could say that sentence with a whole bunch of topics here, but right now I'm going to say this is the year, 2025, that we saw a fairly significant change in one of the golden rules of business for the past 50 years. Is that as you grow revenue, you grow headcount, and this is the year that rule broke. And we are going to see. We're already seeing it, but David, it was back in May that we did a cover story on the Insider about all the layoffs that were happening, and that story has not gone away. Every month, there's just been more and more, and we're seeing chart after chart of companies that are indeed growing their revenue and indeed cutting their headcount at the same time. And so the golden rule that these two have always been kind of in correlation with each other is definitely broken down. And I think we're going to see that significantly in that gap even increase more. I think it's going to get very ugly on the employment side, but very exciting in the productivity side. So hopefully these things will, create a whole new set of energy and innovation that comes with it that solves the employment stuff. That's what usually happens. I don't know how many people were put out of work by the steam engine, but um, but but it's not it's a brutal transition, and I think we're heading for a brutal transition with the jobs.
Well, Dave, I agree with what you're saying, certainly from the standpoint of how important that story was this year. I don't know that I agree with where you see the future going or the fact that it's going to be a transition. One of the tenets of physics, I'm a big science guy, is that when you make a column tall enough, no matter what it's made of, it will eventually start to bend, whether that's a tree growing or a steel column that you're building for a skyscraper or whatever. Once it gets out to a certain point, it can no longer sustain its weight and it starts to kind of curve over. And I'm afraid that's the pivot point that we're seeing right now with the subject that you're bringing up. Just as we're recording this morning, another large company has said that they're going to cut 10%, and the next company says they're going to cut, and the next company says they're going to cut. And there was an article also, again, as we're recording this morning, about how people are flocking to Walmart to buy groceries. Why are they doing it? I'm doing that. The butter at Walmart is cheaper by about $1 than it is at my local supermarket. So I'm shopping more at Walmart for groceries. Why am I doing that? Because I need to save money. Why is it cheaper? Really good question. Does Walmart have a better business model, or are they not paying their people enough as opposed to the people that are working in the supermarket? We are starting to see, again, with the announcement that came out this morning, without naming any companies, we're starting to see people that they're cutting headcount because they're afraid of revenue reductions. They're not going to grow as fast. Why are they not going to grow as fast? Because there are not enough people employed buying their stuff. And I think we're going to get to the point where this, I'm going to lay off because Wall Street loves it. And all of a sudden they're going to realize that there's nobody out there to buy their stuff. I don't think it's a long-term strategy. I think it is, you're
No,
right,
so
beginning of a
I really
pivot.
got to double down on this then because you're referring to that old model where revenue and employees kind of went mostly correlated. And if you kind of diverge a little bit, it was just temporary and then it'll eventually work their way back. And that's what you're pointing out. But I'm saying, no, this has been 2025 is the year. And we've been in technology. We've been selling technology for most of our careers. And, it's going to free up headcount. It's going to make you more efficient. It's going to do whatever. And it's never really been true. We always just find other ways to do stuff. But the rules have changed, and we're seeing it industry after industry that companies can do more, actually do more with less people, and it's across the board. And the thing is, we're still in the early stages of this AI. And so right now, the AI is really impacting the tech industry. The number of software developers you need, the number of technical people you need. But as we start moving into the next stages, and we're starting to see it in pharma, that they could develop drugs faster with AI. They could do. We're just going to start seeing more and more, cars and watches and stuff that get manufactured without humans. I mean, we're going to see a significant divergence, but we're already, like I said, we're already seeing it between revenue and employee count, and it's clearly started. The thing with Verizon, the most recent one, the Verizon's doing this big riff. And the reason they're doing the riff, it's crazy, is to improve customer service. They say that we're losing business to our competitors because we're too hard to do business with, so we're going to get rid of 13,000 people. It's like this is a whole new way of thinking. This is not the way it used to be. And so I think so. My point for looking at 25, it's a whole bunch of transitions going on. And I got a full page here of all these things I can think about. But I think one of the key takeaways is this divergence from revenue and employee count, unlike we've ever seen before.
I
And potential
completely agree.
impact on
Just
customers.
for a second to clarify my comment, and then Erwin, you can go.
Yeah.
I completely agree with everything that you said. We don't have a disagreement there. My point is, at some point in the near future, companies, organizations, sellers will realize that agents, while it might make their company more productive, don't actually buy anything. And there's going to be a dearth of customers. And that's where revenue is going to start to take a hit. Because if you're more productive, so that you can make the products better, faster, easier with much less people, but there are much less people to buy them, something's going to hit the fan somewhere. Just to
That's
clarify.
that's half the problem. The other half of the problem is that the agents don't pay into Social Security. And so as we reduce the headcount, that we're supposed to be filling up the Social Security fund with the new young generation, but the agents aren't paying taxes. And so we're going to have a problem there. Irwin, what's your thought?
No, I wholeheartedly agree. You're chasing the customers away. I know I have kids who've recent college graduates that workforce is struggling in many cases to find good work. I saw the MIT study that came out this morning said about 12% of the U.S. workforce is already vulnerable to being replaced with AI. So that, opens up the door to policy issues of, do we tax AI? Do we create a universal basic income and so on? That's probably well beyond our scope, but definitely if looking ahead to 26, I think it's going to be massive as an issue.
Okay. After we put that little issue aside, Mr. Banting, what's your number one issue?
Number two
Yeah.
issue. Oh no, it's number one. Okay.
Let's go for number one. I think for me, 2025 has been the time where AI risk, security, and compliance has become a new center of gravity. I think looking back on the year, AI stopped being a bit of a fairy story or a fairy tale and has become quite a hard-hitting compliance story. And I think enterprises are now treating UC systems as regulated infrastructure and not just internal collaboration tools. So we spoke about recording of meetings. What happens if I mention something that's under NDA? What happens if I mention something that I shouldn't have? How do I make sure that meeting is compliant and is all the guardrails are in place around regulations? So I think what we have seen through the year is Microsoft has certainly doubled down on responsible AI frameworks and auditability. We've seen Cisco leaning into sovereignty with regional cloud boundaries and some of these sector-specific compliance features. And the reason why I think it's interesting is if I look at our Techtelligence buying intent data, we're seeing that there's tens of thousands of enterprise customers every week researching things like AI risk, AI security, and broader AI compliance tools and topics. It's the largest, most sustained signal of the whole year. So I think we're getting enterprises thinking about they want to understand what models we use. They want observability. They want to know how the AI has been trained, where the data flows, how they mitigate regulatory risk as well. So I think to sum it all up, the next competitive frontier is really going to be whether or not the platform can stand up to scrutiny from compliance, legal, and audit teams. So I think the industry has moved from this AI innovation and hype to more around AI accountability and assurance.
Interesting. Do you think that we're going to get a test court case around the compliance issue? Is something going to come up from one of the public LLMs or from one of the private uses of discovery inside an enterprise and it wasn't handled correctly or recorded or saved? Do you think there's something coming up that's going to hit something?
That's the only thing that's going to change. I mean, what we find out along the tech hype cycle really is that the technology takes off, and then a couple of years behind it, you get all the legal and regulatory stuff that comes out, and there's usually a few test cases that prove it. So I'm waiting for something to happen, and all of a sudden it's like, well, how did that AI make that assumption? What happened? And in regulatory industries or regulated industries, things like healthcare, that's a legal minefield. If you get AI making a decision and it's the wrong decision and someone dies or gets injured, you better have observability in place, because when that goes to court, you're going to have to prove that you had due diligence and took care somewhere along the lines.
Well, first off, you're cheating. The rules are to talk about the biggest things in 25, not the biggest things in the coming up. But secondly, I would say that that's just a shift in the same problem, right? So in healthcare, you've got liabilities, whether it's a human diagnosis or medical or a machine diagnosis, doesn't really matter. There has to be safeguards in place. There has to be second opinions, whatever, all the best practices, and they're going to adapt and develop. But it's the same basic problem. It's not a new problem.
I was going to ask the question whether we think that the test case around Air Canada when it came up with a fair sale, their AI came up with a fair sale that didn't exist, and the court said it needed to be honored. If we're going to start to see that replicate in other industries, that anytime AI makes a mistake, the courts are going to say, who is agentic? Who has the agency when my AI says,
Yep.
yeah, I mean the meme that's floating around the internet right now is around are these mushrooms edible? And somebody
Mm.
eats them, and they're in the hospital, and they ask the AI, and the AI says, "Oh yeah, those are poisonous. I mean, you could have eaten them, but where is the
Yeah.
agency? Where is
Yeah.
the responsibility?" I
The,
don't think
the,
we've resolved that at all.
does your dog bite? Is the Inspector Clouseau version of that? I, it's not my dog.
Exactly.
That's not my dog.
Yeah. Uh,
But
All
don't you
right.
think that
Well,
observability, how AI makes these decisions, should be visible in the business? Or are you quite happy just saying, well, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It's made the decision for me.
yeah,
Do you
we
think
have
that's an
no way of
important
knowing how
thing?
the AI makes a decision. It's just like we have no way of knowing how a human makes their decisions.
You know,
And so
I think it depends on the AI. I mean, we use Gemini a lot. Gemini will give you all of its sources and show you how it's thinking and things like that. And it's not super accurate in a lot of the research that I do. It'll find garbage on the internet. And, a lot of people are probably going to be focusing on poisoning it if they're not already. But,
you,
yeah,
I got to say, Ron, it's a great example. I was just having a conversation about the TV show West Wing, and we were trying to figure out who certain actors were. So I asked Gemini who the actors were in West Wing, and it was giving me the wrong answer, and I knew it was the wrong answer, and it was giving me sources for everybody else but this one particular person, and I was like pushing back. You didn't give me a source on this person. I think you're wrong. And I said, no, you're right. And was arguing with me, and we kept on arguing. And then I was able to like trick it into approaching the problem a different way. And it finally admitted, you are right. This person was never in West Wing. And it took, a lot of effort, even though it had footnotes and even though I kept on telling it all that stuff. And so I don't, there is a trust issue. And that's going to take
yeah.
time to, yeah.
Yeah,
I
And
would
there's a
not.
difference between AI that's trained on, Twitter and Reddit and all those other public sources, and those that are trained on your data, which hopefully, in theory, you can rely on more for business use.
I think that though there's a broader issue that like even if there is observability, so let's say you're a financial institution and you have to be able to justify, kind of why you gave or denied a loan. The challenge with an AI system is it might look at thousands of signals in your data, to your point, or when you train it properly. But even then, when, the financial institution says, Mr. Keeler, we denied your loan, and you say, well, you need to explain to me why you denied it. When there's thousands upon thousands of signals, the bank will print out, all these hundreds of pages and say, well, here's the rationale. And it's, no human can really, look at all of those signals that an automated AI can. So even if we have deep observability, it might be so complicated to understand that it
Mm.
effectively becomes useless to a human trying to understand these AI systems.
That's the key point, and I'm really glad you said that because the goal isn't to train the AI the way that we do it as a human. The goal is to use the AI to do it differently. And there's been a number of examples with that, and a good one is stock picking. We know how a New York financial analyst, what they look at, all the key metrics they look at, and they put a little bit of their own judgment into it. When you train an AI to pick stocks that way, it does just like a human does. When you say just do it any way you want, and it starts looking at things that we never thought of, correlations that we never considered. It starts looking at climate data. It starts looking at all kinds of stuff, and it actually does better. And so trying to understand how it got there is often defeating the purpose of using it.
It's interesting. I'm going to play a clip here in a second of the scene from The Matrix where Morpheus talks about how we all patted ourselves on the back because we discovered AI.
But what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence as we gave birth to
AI. And the plot line of The Matrix is that the AI took over the world and it became a challenge between AI and humans. I think we're at that same pivot point where we're all, proud of ourselves of creating AI. But what I think the reality is I don't think AI is going to kill us. I think our reliance on our inappropriate reliance or our inappropriate use of certain AI is what's going to get to us. I'm reading stories on the internet about people that are interviewing for jobs that are going 2, 3 layers in before even speaking to a human, that they're
Yeah.
recording answers to a bot. Is that the right way to identify? Because if it is a bot, doesn't that essentially mean that there's a way to break it? That there's a way that you can cheat the system and there's no human there watching it? Is it safer? Is it less safe?
Again, you're assuming the humans can't be broken, but there's a whole bunch. This is what I'm saying. We're at this point in time where there's just all these little things that are starting. They're going to have huge ramifications. Along those lines, the idea of having an AI chat companion, I think is fantastic for elderly people. I think, if you're living alone and you've got no one to talk to, I think these are fantastic. Talk about the news, talk about all kinds of stuff. I think they're incredibly dangerous for teenagers and youth. And so it's like, how do you draw that line? Is it as simple as you have to be 55 and over to use it? It's not going to happen. So it's just we're at the beginning of a lot of stuff, but maybe we got to get back to 2025.
And we're supposed to be using Grok now to roast people at parties to show how funny we are, right?
Yeah.
You saw that comment from Elon the other day. But you're right. I think
Absolutely.
a lot of younger people get sucked into it, and that becomes their friends, and that's not a good thing.
Well, the one point that I'll add to something to what everybody has said today, which is outside of my normal comfort zone, is the value of some of the AI large language models that are coming out. Instead of talking about how awful they are, because I actually do think they're awful, but instead of talking about that, let me explain a situation. We all, as we go through life, those of us in this type of civilization, have problems with companies. And there was a time, probably about 5 years ago, for about 2 or 3 years, that we could broadcast and resolve problems with companies. Anybody could, because Twitter, when it existed at the time, let you speak right to a company in public, and they were afraid of what the ramification was. So if you had a bad airline experience or if you had a bad purchasing experience, you could send a note right to them and they would respond because they cared about what they thought was. Because of what's happened to Twitter, that time is gone, and we no longer have that. What I've discovered is that the large language models that exist for public use, the free ones even, whether we're talking about Gemini or ChatGPT or whichever one you happen to be using, are really smart about getting to the problems of company governance. The next time you have a problem with your healthcare issue or a product that you bought that's not working, you can ask the AI to write you a note, and you can ask them, who should I email it to? Give me the names and the email addresses of the senior people at the company that would respond to such a thing. And you know what? It accesses these names and these references from public filings, from tax records,
Yeah.
it's amazing the names that it comes up with. It probably shouldn't, but it's there right now. So we're in another bubble where you can actually ask for, who should I send this complaint to about the healthcare experience that I'm having, about the healthcare insurance problem that I'm having. There have been times when I've been working for 3 months to resolve an issue, and I finally get fed up and go the route I just explained. And I got an email yesterday that somebody wants to call me this afternoon to resolve it.
Hmm.
It's
Wow.
a tool
So
we can be using until somebody figures it out.
I got a similar story. A friend of mine has a boiler, a heating system in his home. He could not figure it out for the life of him. Couldn't find anyone to support it or service it. He took pictures of it and went to, I think it was ChatGPT, and he got everything. He got an explanation, he got manuals, he got a recommendation on what was wrong with his current system. He was told how to fix it. I mean, it was just like it was all there, and that's what Altman and others keep talking about. You've got an expert at your disposal to help you with a lot of things, and I think that's the part that we haven't really figured out yet. There's
And a good friend of mine that is an analyst for one of the large cloud companies told me that when he's evaluating large language models and AI instances, that what he does, he takes two different unrelated long series of television shows, and puts in a query saying, compare the people that appeared on this show with the people that appeared on this show, and tell me where they were the same people, what actors were on both shows. And if it can provide the answer to that question based on what he knows to be true, the example that he gave me was, tell me everybody who's appeared on Miami Vice and The Sopranos. If it can give you that answer, that means it's accessing the public information and it's thinking intelligently. It's comparing the notes. And if it gives you the accurate information, that's when it's actually doing thinking for you. It's a very easy test. So according to him, that's what he uses to test it. I don't know what you guys use to test it. I suppose we should be asking the AI chefs, but that's another story.
Well,
real quick, with a thing like that, if it gives you the wrong answer, if you say, what are the common actors, and it starts spouting out actors and it's hallucinating, say to it, did you just make that up? Give me the real answer. And then sometimes it will give you the real answer, so that your friend or that person's test isn't a valid test if he's not saying, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, please do the research and give me real answers. If you give it that and then it still gives you the wrong answer, then it fails the test.
It's the test today. There'll be a new one tomorrow and another one after that as well. And anybody who's trying to search for the head of a healthcare insurance company is probably not going to be able to do it after I've announced this on this call. But, we have like 5 minutes left. Anybody want to give one line or one word?
I got a big one. I think that for a lot of us will have opinions on, which is the Enterprise Connect event. End of an era. It's been 20 years, something like that, in Orlando every year. There was a lot of frustration with the show this year, and now it's moving to Vegas. And I think that's one of the bigger stories, actually, of our industry, of why that's occurred. If anyone has an opinion they want to share, I certainly have my thoughts and what that represents.
I'm hoping that they will be successful, but none of us really know what the experience is going to be like until we experience it there for the first time. That's the first point. I have my reasons for thinking why they did it. It's been a difficult economic model where you're charging the exhibitors and you're charging the attendees. That's a squeeze that's very hard for a public trade show to work. You're typically charging one or the other, but not both. But I'm hopeful that it'll be successful. I'll be there. We'll see.
I'll be there as well. I mean, I think the trend is reflective of what we talked about earlier, in that that it shifted to be much more of a contact center focused show, which puts it into competition with ICMI, Cloud Call Center Week, and all the other contact center shows. The buyer side has generally gravitated toward a platform. So you see massive success of the Microsoft events, Microsoft community events. I went to Google Cloud Next back in April. They had 30,000 people there. I was at Oracle AI World a couple of weeks ago. They had 12,000 people. So, it seems like the independent go and shop around and look at different technology events are really struggling in the communication collaboration space, because a lot of companies have just made their decisions at this point.
I think a lot of companies have made that decision, Irwin. I think that's the reason why Today Digital focused on Techtelligence. It was to sort of explore that dark funnel, because it's surprising. There's over 80% of businesses have already made their shortlist before the vendor actually gets to know. So you don't go to an event like Enterprise Connect to draw up your own shortlist. Your shortlist is drawn up, and then you get wined and dined by in executive briefing centers by the likes of Cisco and Zoom and Microsoft and everyone else. And you can take your time, you can get your questions answered by experts. You don't have to pay any money to do that. So I think if Enterprise Connect can focus more on what value it's bringing to buyers or attendees, rather than how much we can extract from vendors in terms of exhibits, then it will do well.
All right, let's pause there. I want to give everybody 30 seconds for a commercial. How can people reach out to you? What do you do? Let's do it in the same order we started in before. Irwin, tell people how they can get in touch with you and what you do.
Find me on LinkedIn, Irwin Lazar, or metrigy.com. Those are the best ways to reach me.
Okay, and why should people reach you?
Hopefully keep up with what we're doing from a research perspective. Write quite a bit for No Jitter for the search enterprise communication, unified communications, and then publishing quite a bit of research on the Metrigy site.
Thank you for all you do, for all your research. Mr. Maldow.
David Maldow at Let's Do Video. You can click here to subscribe to my YouTube channel. where all my content is, or you could find me at letsdovideo.com or on LinkedIn.
Thank you, David. Mr. Kieller.
Yeah, so I'm Kevin Kieller. You can find me on LinkedIn or enableuc.com. I love helping people get the most out of technology, back from when I wrote video games for the VIC-20 Commodore 64. So today, with vendors, I help, as an analyst, and with enterprises, I help as a consultant, but all of it's around making the most out of this cool technology.
Mr. Michels.
David Michels, Talking Points. You can find me at the airport usually, and talkingpoints.com.
With a Z. Talking Points with a Z. You forgot to say that. Mr. Banting.
Yep, thank you, David. So Tim Banting, you can reach out via LinkedIn or at techtelligence.com. And I get excited around uncovering and shedding some light on the dark funnel, looking at buying intense data and how thousands of companies are sort of researching the areas that we love and breathe.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody. Since Dave Michels talked about Talking Points, which is where you can find me as well, I'll take this opportunity to say happy holidays. Enjoy time with your family. Family first is one of the things that I believed in for many years of my career, and I still do. We can all spend as much time as we want playing with AI and technology and everything else, but spend time with people that mean something to you, because you can always buy more stuff, but you can't buy more time. And that's the most important message. Thank you very much this year for watching UC Weekly News. We will be back with a new show next week and lots of fun stuff next year. We'll see if we were right. Take care, everybody.